Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Why did you quit your job right away? Part 5. For an IT company, I worked on a project where I installed new hardware and software for imaging checks at banks all over the country. There were 6 of us in my office plus the boss. Since there are 6 of us, 2 of us would go to each site to do the install. Takes about a month. We would leave on a Monday morning, work all week, and then leave the site on Friday afternoon to fly home that evening. Do it again until the site is done. After about 6 months, our manager tells us that we won't be going home on Friday night, but instead we'll stay on site until 5 p.m. on Friday and fly home on Saturday morning. People didn't like this and they swore and complained a lot, but we took it because the pay was pretty good. That same month, our manager tells us on a conference call that we'll be flying out on Sunday night so that we can be at the site first thing Monday morning. We'll still be flying home on Saturday from the site. Getting paid 7 days a week? No way, no way. We all quit right away, all 6 of us. My coworker and I left our site right away, work not done, and flew home. I took my laptop back to the office the next day and got my last paycheck. I gave the Complete Idiot's Guide to Managing People to my manager, who is no longer my boss. Didn't go over well. The last job I had was at a firm with the most controlling lawyer I've ever met. He was the coolest guy on campus because he was half of the name attorney and attorney. He had to oversee everything, even though it wasn't his job. He told us what to do without asking our bosses, set our hours, letting us stay or leave without asking our boss, which often messed up our hours and made us give him our work to do when we were supposed to, and it would have been much more efficient to do it ourselves. He got mad if you didn't let him know when you finished the claim he sent you. He always had work to do and would send us work from home. He chose to work from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, 7 days a week. This was only done to keep track of how work was done. That wasn't even the worst part. He was clearly sexist and yelled at workers in public for no reason, while supervisors and other workers did nothing but watch. It was not okay for him to scold workers for small things like wearing shoes with open toes, while some were allowed to walk around in slippers and leggings. There was silence when he made a woman cry over something that wasn't even important. My coworker String was scolded in front of me, making her cry while he smiled. That was the moment the wheels fell off. His wife, who was the account manager, also wouldn't update her pay raise, even though both of her bosses had agreed in writing that it should be backdated and that she was owed a few $1,000s. She quit right away because she was sick of being abused. She packed up her things and left, leaving me as the only person in my department on shift. He changes the subject and says something like, "You're not going to get upset like she did, right? Like, women, am I right?" Something like that. I was so mad that I didn't say a word and I got up and grabbed my things, not even clocked out. The main woman we worked with was out of state on a 2-week vacation, which meant that the night shift was empty for the whole time. In the week before I started, girls were leaving in other departments. Some found other jobs and put in their 2 weeks, while others just left. People have had a notoriously hard time filling my position. Several people quit before they even had a month on the job, and I found out it was all because of how bad the boss was. There was a reason why there were no women lawyers. His overt sexism made them all quit. They wanted to put more work on me without giving me a raise, mind you, but I said F that. I hope more people left after me. The medical filing department wasn't exactly overworked as it was. Behind his back, everyone, even his partner-in-law, told him that the boss was an effing joke. But no one dared to speak out because they were afraid of being abused. I lasted a month there and searched online for horror stories from former employees. I don't feel bad about anything I did, and I hope that his boss gets sued by a group of people for discrimination and not paying them enough. By the way, he'd flirt with the girls he liked and let them off the hook for not doing much work while yelling at those of us who worked hard and didn't get as many claims during slow hours, because who the F answers the phone after 7 p.m. from an attorney's office wanting to represent them on a Social Security claim? Do not look for help from the government anywhere other than official.gov websites. All day and night, lawyers from all over the tri-state area and maybe even the country will call you to try to get you to hire them to handle your case. Always ask about firms. You'll be surprised how quickly people give out their social when asked. When I worked for a big defense electronics company in Florida, I was in charge of their IT department and worked with computers and networks. They called the project to move their computers from Windows 98 to Windows NT, the Y2K project, right before the year 2000, even though it had nothing to do with that. People in power made up Y2K to get them to give a lot of money. Anyway, there were about 3,000 workstations that needed to be upgraded and only about 15 techs available. This meant that many long nights were spent cloning hard drives and backing up important user data to get it all done in time for Y2K. We had to work around the engineers' regular work hours, and each person could only do one station per day. The whole process took more than 6 hours, even with as much automation as we used. After this went on for a while, we had a department meeting. There were still a few months left until the turn of the year. Our boss told us that because we were so far behind, everyone would have to work at least 80 hours a week, 7 days a week until the job was done. They would not get weekends off. Oh, by the way, all of you are in an employment category where we can't get approved to pay you more than 10 hours overtime, so you will only be paid for 50 hours a week. We all dropped our jaws at the same time and asked if we were hearing things correctly. We did, yes. A few of us said that's certainly against the law. The manager said, and I quote, "So? Because we're a corporation, employment laws don't apply to us. The government won't go after us because they can't do their jobs without our gear, and they know we have too many agreements not to tell them things. You should know that we manage your security clearances. If you want to keep your job or be able to get one, you need to do what you need to do and not say anything about it. Stop complaining about the law." Needless to say, we were all completely shocked when a senior manager at a big company admitted that they had been acting and making threats that were clearly illegal. Unfortunately, we knew they were right about the scam they were running. No lawyer in our area would take an employment case against the company, and the media would also avoid covering the story for the same reason. So, by the end of that very week, myself and 12 other IT tech employees out of 15 just up and walked out, citing to HR the rampant corporate misconduct as our reason for leaving. The company was screwed, and they knew it, but they totally deserved it. It would be very hard to replace the people who were leaving, let alone quickly. This is because many of them had high-level security clearances that let them work on computers used for secret projects. Later, I heard that all the employees who quit were much happier at their new jobs. Even those who didn't make as much per hour were glad they left. When was your F this HOA moment? Part 5. My wooden fence has been hit by the HOA's sprinklers for years. About 5 years ago, I told them it was wrong and asked them to fix it. Someone told me to kick rocks. So I got rid of the wooden fence, which regularly had whole sections blow down, and put up a vinyl fence that was approved by the HOA. I got letters with pictures of us working on it telling us that we had to take down the vinyl fence and return the old wooden fence because we hadn't sent in an architectural plan. I pretty much told them to burn an H, that the garbage, rotting fence was in pieces and the vinyl posts were already set in concrete. They told me they would find me the most money they could, but instead they wrote me a harsh letter telling me I was wrong for not doing things their way. It was put at the base of the last post before I put concrete on it. FHOA. I did live with a terrible HOA, and I will never again. First, I bought a pricey condo in a nice suburb with good schools. A lot of the people in this condo community were on fixed incomes. At the time, the community was all white, and about 65% of the people living there were 60 years old or older. Altogether, there were about 60 units. I was 37 years old, married, and had 2 kids. The condo was 3,000 square feet and had vaulted ceilings, 3 huge bedrooms, 2 huge bathrooms, and a huge kitchen. That was a great time to buy, and I loved the condo inside. The Florida room, screened patio, and our condo was the better version. As we looked at the condo, I asked for copies of the HOA. If I asked 5 more times, they wouldn't show it to me until the end of the deal. That was the first red flag. It was 300 pages of legalese that said everything from what kind of car you could park in your driveway to how many guests you could have in your condo and what kind of blinds you had to use in your vault windows. The first fine. The great room had a 25-foot vault and a strange window that looked like the Death Star. I didn't want to put a shade in it because it was high and I like natural light. Nope, given a fine. A custom shade had to be bought and put up. The fine was $50 and the shade cost $450. For the second fine, the HOA did some landscaping, but only planted trees and bushes and cut the grass. We had to put down mulch, plant flowers, and pull weeds from our beds. I left the hose on my porch that is closed off. Given a fine. I'm ready to move now. This old jerk who used to work at the post office and retired 600 years ago was the president of the HOA. She spent her whole life walking around the properties and standing on people's porches with measuring tapes to tell them that their fence isn't square, their door is faded and needs painting, etc. She was the meanest person in the world. People paid $300 a month to join the HOA. That money was used to sue people, fine people, and have a third party manage the complaint system. The only thing the condo had going for it was a clubhouse where they played euchre. That woman would never let you use the clubhouse even if you begged her to. During the last interaction, I was on my porch one Friday afternoon staring at my shrubs that had been cut down to little nubs. I told my neighbor how awful it looks and asked them why the HOA cut down all our shrubs when the big old dog comes stumbling around the corner. Right now, my 19-year-old sister-in-law drives up and parks in a guest spot. Her car was a Lancer that was 7 years old. It walks right up to my sister and asks, "Who are you? This is not a place to park." "Who are you?" my sister asks. "I can park here. This is guest parking," I said as I walked toward them. This person points her finger at my sister and says that her car is dirty and old. Then I walked in between them and asked, "Whoa, are you crazy?" The next weekend, I put my house on the market. A lot of people told me they didn't like the shrubs, so I sent the association bills asking them to refund my condo fees so I could landscape my yard properly. We still had to pay condo fees, but they stopped clearing snow and stopped recycling. They were told there was an HOA and a fee they had to pay when they moved into their new home about 6 years ago. About a week after they moved, there was an HOA meeting that only about 10 people, not a very big neighborhood, had to attend in person. No bill or anything else from the HOA ever came to my parents after the meeting. They even called to ask if they owed any money, and the HOA told them they didn't. After 6 years, the HOA decided to send all the neighbors a letter and notice of another HOA meeting. The letter also said that the neighbors were behind on their HOA fees and would be sent to collections if they weren't paid, which meant that everyone owed thousands of dollars in fees. I wasn't there at the meeting, but I heard the neighbors teared those HOA guys a new one, and the HOA said they were working on hiring a new management company to handle its payments. It's ridiculous. I own a townhouse in Alexandria. The homeowners are given a parking pass that lets them park in any spot that isn't marked with a number. I came home to get ready for a trip to Africa the next morning and saw that someone had parked in my number 1 spot. There was no other parking available except for the visitor parking. The HOA called the tow company after I did. I went to bed early because my flight was early. What kind of crap do I find the next morning? My car was towed by the tow company. After calling the HOA, they told me I shouldn't have parked in visitor. I told them everything and even sent them the bylaws that say a homeowner tag lets visitors park, and I said I had to get to the airport. It didn't bother them. I told the police that my car had been stolen. They looked into it and told me the taxi company. I told the police what was going on and showed them the rules. The officer said they did a wrong tow. It's the same thing as stealing. I was told I could sue, but it would cost a lot of money for lawyers. I agreed to put a sticker that says Camel Night Towing on my Jeep and start towing people's cars erroneously for $200 because the police aren't going to do their job. I had to pay $200 in the end. I also told my neighbor, the president of the HOA, to go to H. If you want to watch the part 4, click the link here. We're very, very glad to see you all in the comments again. Many, many thanks for your support.